up, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about my personal fibromyalgia journey and what a day kind of looks like with fibromyalgia, and hopefully help just educate you on this chronic illness in general and how it impacts me. It seems like today is the perfect day to talk about fibromyalgia because I've been in a flare for 3 days. And so all of the symptoms and everything that I feel with fibromyalgia are front of mind right now. So let's get into what that looks like. I do want to start with just reading a simple definition of fibromyalgia. Normally I would just explain what it is, but I'm having one of the main symptoms really bad today, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the video. And so I'm just going to read it to you. So fibromyalgia is a disorder characterized by widespread musculoskeletal pain accompanied by fatigue, sleep, memory, and mood issues typically. There is no cure for fibromyalgia. There's a lot of research out there even now to try to figure out the primary cause and figure out some type of a cure, but there isn't anything at this point that has been found to cure the chronic illness of fibromyalgia. There are actually over 200 symptoms related to fibromyalgia, and so there's no way that I could possibly cover all of that here, but I want to talk a little bit about how fibromyalgia impacts me and hopefully say some things that you can relate to, either as someone who struggles with fibromyalgia or knowing someone who does. I want you to feel less alone in that if I can help in any way. So let's jump right into that. My fibromyalgia story looks fairly similar to my rheumatoid arthritis story, except for the treatment plan. So I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia really at the same time that I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. That was in 2018, and my symptoms were present but not nearly as impactful as they are now. It took about 2 years, I think, for those symptoms to really start impacting me day to day. The difference with fibromyalgia is that there isn't a cure for it, and there's not even a good treatment plan that has been developed out to help address fibromyalgia and all of the symptoms that are involved with it. And so over time, I've started to learn more about myself and listen to my body and figure out what I need in order to help with those symptoms. But I don't take any kind of treatment or medication that has really been a game changer for me. On a typical day when I'm not actually in the middle of a fibromyalgia flare, I have widespread pain all over my body. There are actually a number of trigger points for people with fibromyalgia where those points on your body are very sensitive and tender, and you can pretty much pick those out. I think anyone with fibromyalgia will tell you specifically where their tender points are, and I think they're pretty consistent for everyone with fibromyalgia. So a typical day is, widespread pain. It's manageable. I would say the average day, my pain level is about a 3 to a 4 with pain medication that I take regularly, and I'm not talking about like over-the-counter pain medications. They're specifically designed to handle the changes in the signals the pain signals that are sent to your brain. And so they aren't your typical pain medications that you can get over the counter. Other symptoms that I may have on just an average day would be fatigue. This is not the same as tiredness or exhaustion. The reason why I want to mention that is because I think a lot of people actually misuse the word fatigue as, oh, I've worked really hard today, or I've done a lot and I'm very fatigued. And that's not fatigue. Another common side effect that I have on a daily basis has to do with sleeping but not actually resting. So what happens is that the pain signals being sent to your brain from the tender points in your body actually interrupt your regular sleep cycle, so you never make it through a full sleep cycle during the night. And because of that, you actually wake up in the morning after you could sleep for 8, 10, 12 hours and not even feel rested. So it's kind of a compounding problem, because the more that you don't sleep, the worse your symptoms get. But the worse that your symptoms get, the less that you actually are able to sleep and rest. A few other common symptoms that I will have, definitely on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, depending on what my environment looks like, would include migraines. I usually have about 2 migraines a week, if not more. And that's just on an average week. And then just overall pain in my joints, pain in the trigger points that I mentioned earlier. I do want to talk a little bit about the way fibromyalgia impacts your sensory system, because I don't think a lot of people are educated completely on what that looks like. And as someone with fibromyalgia, I know that that impacts me every single day of my life, and so I feel like it's important. So the first thing I want to mention is that fibromyalgia actually alters the way that pain signals are sent to the brain and the way that the brain interprets those signals. And so in reality, you may not actually be in pain, but signals are being sent to your brain to tell your brain that you are in severe pain. I also notice every single day differences in just my sensory system in general. There are certain things that the touch of it will trigger pain in my body. One of the really impactful symptoms has to do with sound or noise that's around you. So you actually become extremely overstimulated very easily by noise, and it can really set off flares in your pain levels. I'm also extremely sensitive to light, whether that be sunlight or spotlights or really any kind of bright light. It just completely sets everything off for me and will usually cause me to have a migraine if I'm around it for very long at all. So now that we've talked about what kind of an average day looks like, I want to talk about what a flare day looks like, because it's very different. In a later video, I will take a deep dive into what a day in my life looks like when I'm in a flare, but for now I just want to talk about what that looks like from a symptom perspective. Since I'm in a flare today, I'm having a lot of brain fog. And what I mean when I say brain fog is that your cognitive ability to process information, remember information, really just any aspect of speaking, reading, writing, anything that causes your brain to have to recall or process information is just like completely shut down, does not work. And so I would be having a really hard time to remember these symptoms, even though I deal with them consistently, if I wasn't reading them off. So don't mind me. The main symptom that I want to talk about, of course, is pain. It's the primary symptom, I would say, of fibromyalgia. So on any given flare day, I will usually have triggered areas on my body. But in general, I would say I can have pain anywhere from like a level 6 to a level 10 on a flare day. It's typically about a level 8 pain on a 1 through 10 scale, and it's very widespread, so it's hard for me to even describe what that feels like. It's kind of like your entire body is on fire and you're just like slowly burning, and everything hurts. It hurts to sit down, it hurts to lay down, it hurts to walk, it hurts to stand. And I think one of the oddest ways that I'm impacted by the pain is that it actually hurts to even have anything against your skin. So any type of like clothing or blankets or anything, it hurts so much against your skin. And there's really no explanation for it. There's been a lot of research on it, but at this point there's no explanation as to why that happens. On a flare day, I will usually always have a migraine headache. I've actually gotten to the point where if you see me out, I may have a migraine headache, which I know sounds crazy to people that get migraines, but you just start to build up really an immunity to it. And I was talking to a coworker the other day, and she had asked me how I felt about having a migraine that day, and I had told her, I said, I can feel terrible from anywhere, and so I've learned to just push myself and get out and do things even though I don't feel well. Another symptom is chronic fatigue. So chronic fatigue on a flare day is indescribable. Like, you can't do anything on a flare day. It's basically the feeling of not being able to keep your eyes open. You essentially feel like you have a terrible case of the flu and you just need to sleep the whole time. But then when you sleep, that vicious cycle of being interrupted during your sleep cycle keeps happening. And so you never actually become rested. You just continue to be fatigued. So when you're in a flare, it's basically impossible to rest well because you are at these very high pain levels and there's no way to address it. You can't take over-the-counter pain medications to help it because of the type of pain that fibromyalgia causes and the way that it alters your brain and those pain signals that go to your brain. Two other symptoms that I would be completely remiss if I didn't mention them are anxiety and depression. When you are either in a flare or just in a normal day with fibromyalgia, anxiety and depression are so hard to deal with. And it's a consistent thing. It's something that I fight every single day. The anxiety has to do a lot of times with fearing the unknown and even fearing what will come of your chronic illness. I will regularly have panic attacks and have to struggle through and fight through those anxious thoughts, and I'm slowly learning how to manage that, but it's something that I definitely fight every day. And then with depression, it's again something that is triggered so much through chronic illness, and that's one of the reasons why I want to be here to walk through your journey of chronic illness with you, because depression is so very strong for people in the chronic illness community, and I don't ever want to make that seem like it's a trivial thing, because it's not. And I fight it every single day. Even the littlest events can trigger a moment of depression and really just spiral you out of control based on the symptoms and the things that you're feeling going on in your body. Even if everything around you is in a good spot and it feels like you shouldn't be depressed, depression will still come on you, just like it does for anyone who struggles with depression. And so I really want to point that out because it's so important and it's a huge part of having chronic illness. Fibromyalgia really doesn't like the weather in general, and definitely does not like weather changes. And so every time that the weather shifts between maybe a colder climate to a warmer climate, or rain comes in, or really any type of precipitation, your generally going to have at least a 1-day flare. For me, it tends to be like 2 or 3 days every time the weather changes, which again, in the Midwest is basically every single day. A lot of times managing your stress levels, your sleep, the way that you eat, the things that you eat, all of that along with your regular routine can usually help with fibromyalgia. But what I will tell you, and I think I've mentioned this in a previous video, but anyone with fibromyalgia or chronic illness in general can attest to this, but you can do every single thing right and you still go into a flare. It doesn't matter. Like, I try to be so cognizant of what I'm dealing with at work and the stress levels in my personal life and try to work through all of that, and it does not matter. At some point there's going to be something that triggers a flare, and that can be very frustrating at times, really all the time. So I understand that you are not alone if you have chronic illness and you feel like there's no explanation for the reason why you feel the way you do. The two primary triggers that I've noticed of fibromyalgia flares in my personal life have to do with stress. Stress is like the biggest thing for me, and I'm slowly learning how to manage stress and get in a better spot, I would say, in my personal life. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be a stressful day that comes up, and you're going to have to handle something that was unexpected or something that you didn't anticipate at all, and it's going to trigger you into a flare. And so you just kind of have to flow with the uncertainty of that. There's really no way to prepare yourself for it. Another thing that may help, and I've actually used pretty significantly, is exercise. I know it sounds absolutely crazy to be like, I am in so much pain. Why on earth would I want to exercise or do any type of physical activity? But it really does help. The more that you can be active, and even if it's just walking across the room, because some days that's about all you can do, that still helps. That still makes a difference. And I find that any way that I can exercise, whether that means doing a very low impact yoga workout or just being able to get up and walk across the room, look out the window, whatever it is for you, that will help so much in the long run. As I said in the beginning, there are over 200 different symptoms of fibromyalgia, and so I can't even begin to scratch the surface of what that looks like for each individual person with fibromyalgia. But I hope you've enjoyed kind of learning more about what my personal day looks like with fibromyalgia, and we will continue to dive deeper into what that looks like on different types of days and how I manage it. But I ultimately wanted to share a little bit about my fibromyalgia story and hopefully make you feel less alone if you have fibromyalgia, because I know it's very difficult. So if you liked this video, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next week for another video.